All right. Aaron, when we were talking about what to discuss, you were someone who I could talk to you on the podcast about 100 different things. You're the one who kind of threw out this topic of how ranchers can best utilize their profits. And why was that something that you want to talk about or that you think is important to bring up during this time period?
Profitability is not something we often think about in the cow-calf industry anyway, or we think about it, but we're not challenged with, oh, I've got some really good income this year. For most cow-calf producers, 2 out of 10 years, what I would say are really good years. And then we have 4 or 5 that are kind of fair. And then there's, 4 to 5 that are kind of challenging years, really financially. We're in a season now where I think many cow-calf producers are going to have some profitability. And I recognize there are some folks that that's not the case. They've had some challenging years. They're trying to heal up financially. And then there's some folks that are in just reduced inventories because of the drought. They've got less cattle in inventory. And so, they're trying to rebuild their herd. But for some folks, they're going to have some profits. And as they think about profits, one of the temptations sometimes is they'll go to their accountant. And I hear this frequently. The charge to the accountant is, I don't want to pay taxes. And so the accountant says, well, then you need to buy something. You need to buy some equipment. You need to buy some cows. And those may be good business decisions. And so if that's a strategy that's been thought through, there's a piece of equipment that you really need. It's going to add value to the business. Maybe there's a need. You've got plenty of forage available. So adding some cows is a good plan. It's not going to increase your overhead cost. There's some strategies where buying something probably makes sense. But the other thing I'd encourage folks is maybe step back a little bit and just think more strategically about your enterprises, your business, and what could you do with profits. And so one of the first things I think is go having a conversation with your accountant now and your banker and just talk through what's the year looking like. If prices stay where they are and we sell calves or we sell yearlings as we normally do, and we're looking at our expense side, where are we going to be sitting? How are things going to look? That just gives you some time to begin to think about what are some options of some things we might do in terms of making investments. And, I think there's a lot of things to make investments in. One of the things I encourage people to invest in is themselves and the people that work for them or work with them. We've had some challenging years in the business, and celebrating people, rewarding people, taking a trip, going and getting an educational experience that maybe you wouldn't normally do, go touring some other operations, making some investments in the people. Maybe it's taking a class. Maybe it's there's an estate plan that you've been thinking, we really need to get on this, but we don't have the capital to go do that right now. This would be a great time to go invest in that. And so those are things, kind of some soft things, I would say, the people side, something I'd really encourage folks to consider and think about.
Okay, so when we're looking at different ways to put those profits and feel good about where we're putting them, you already brought up investing in people, rewarding yourself, rewarding your family, rewarding your employees in a variety of ways. What other categories do you think ranchers should consider?
Yeah, so I think after the people part and some of these soft things we've talked about, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here and just think about your own retirement and think about ways you might use profits not only for retirement, but to give you some access to some capital. So there's some different vehicles out there, whether those are retirement accounts, whether that's a traditional IRA, or if you're a small operation where maybe it's just you and a spouse, something like an individual 401k or one participant 401k. Those are very interesting tools in my mind to be able to manage income in years like this, where you can take a reduction in your taxes. You'll still have to pay self-employment tax on that, but federal state income tax will not be paid. And something like the individual 401k, depending on the provider of that, you can actually go back and then borrow from that up to half of the money you invest. So let's say you had a really windfall year this year, and maybe you made $500 per cow, and you've got more money than you normally would, and you're in a higher tax bracket than you normally would be. Maybe take a chunk of that money and look at considering investing it in something like a 401k, where you can borrow from that, but also then down the road, as you think about maybe transitioning that business to the next generation, oftentimes we've got all of our capital tied up in in hard assets like land and cattle and equipment and don't have much in terms of cash. And so now we've got a generation that's ready to transition out. They want to pass on that operation to the next generation. They're asset rich but cash poor. And so having some money in a 401k, something like that, to provide some outside income. The other thing is a lot of farmers and ranchers don't have much in terms of Social Security because they've tied everything back to that operation. They've plowed their profits back to that. And so I think just recognizing what could you do with that. So really would encourage folks consider investing in a retirement account. Find an expert, find somebody really good that can help you. And then this is, if there's an overarching theme from today, I want to have folks take home, don't wait to be thinking about this. Because what often happens is that all of a sudden we're to December 15th and now there's a scramble to be thinking about what are we going to do because we need to get something done before year end or something like that, whether that's buying equipment or making an investment in something. Think about it now. Doing some prep now gives you some time to think through things and make some decisions and not have them be done in a hurried manner.
All